What's going on, everyone? In one of our previous videos called Real-Time Roasting, all about making our espresso, we had a comment there from Iqbal Maulana who asks, is it okay if we spray some water on the coffee beans? Does it affect change? Well, Iqbal, here's your answer. Yes, it is okay to spray with water, and yes, it can affect change in the coffee. So I hope that helps. Thank you for tuning in. Smash that like button, and don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you next time. No, okay, I'm just joking. Okay, first off, why do we spray water on the coffee? Basically, the idea is that we're roasting the coffee to a certain point, let's say 210 degrees Celsius. We want to cool that down to about 100 degrees Celsius in a rapid amount of time, really between 4 to 6 minutes. So we're using water cooling to speed that and keep that down. Now, why do we need to go fast with that? And that's because, you know, just like cooking meats, when you cook something like roasting, like with the coffee beans, it's going to be generating heat. So we go through the endothermic and then finally the exothermic stages, and then we're finally getting to the point where we're done. We've reached that point that we want. Let's drop the coffee into the cooling tray. However, the coffee's still hot, so it's really still kind of cooking, kind of roasting with it, right? So we now need to stop that. Typically, we're using air cooling to stop that. The difficulty with air cooling is that it requires a lot of air in order to cool the coffee. Now, in most situations with most coffee roasters, that's perfectly fine, right? The air cool tray generates enough airflow to cool the coffee down in 4 to 6 minutes or so, and that's perfect. However, in our situation, our motor died, the motor that turns the stirring arms, and basically trying to get parts like a new motor from the factory in Italy has just proven to be, well, I might as well hit my head against the wall and let it bleed out. The second part of that is that this is a roaster that's from the 1970s. This particular roaster model is still being made today. However, back then, the cooling tray only, like if this is the cooling tray here, only about this much percentage of the cooling tray is actually perforated and available for exhausting or cooling, right? Newer models are fully perforated with, and it's, you know, much different now today. So because we have the problem with the stirrers as well as this smaller patch of cooling in the tray, coffee may not cool down as quickly. The idea behind water quenching is that you're using the water to spray onto the coffee, and that pulls the temperature down. Atomizing and spraying the water over the coffee is much more effective in cooling than it is to use the airflow. The key point with cooling this way is to use the spray method. And so we're spraying just a little bit amount of water onto the coffee so that it fully evaporates pretty much right away. This brings the temperature of the coffee down while not adding any moisture to the coffee, because the coffee's still hot enough that it's basically vaporizing the water and burning it all off. Now, if you want to learn a little bit more about this whole idea of water quenching and how it's being used in coffee, I found a great white paper on it from the Journal of Agricultural and Food Chemistry, and it's titled Influence of Water Cooling on Degassing and Aroma Stability of Roasted Coffee. It'll give you an overview on the different types of water quenching that are available to roasters. Now, some people will tell you these things, that water quenching of the coffee will, lead to cracking of the cellular structure of the beans, premature degassing, and all different types of things. But if you read the paper, you'll see that these studies have shown that those ideas are bunk. Now, in my experience, I think that the quenching of the water by this spray method really helps the coffee because it's pulling the temperature down quickly within that ideal time frame, which prevents elongated cooking of the coffee. It can lead to what we call baking of the coffee, where the flavors become flatter and just kind of not so exciting. And so the cooling of the coffee this way helps to do that. Now, the question is, should you do this at home? Maybe. When I'm roasting coffee in very small quantities, like the typical home roaster will, you do 200 grams to 500 grams. I don't find any particular benefit from using water quenching. Typically in an air-cooled environment, those quantities of coffee will cool very rapidly. There's not as much mass, right? Water quenching is really effective, especially on large-scale commercial roasters that are doing 400, 500, 600,000 pounds at a time. That's when you have such a mass of energy that the water cooling really helps. But in the case of home roasters, I don't know if it's really necessary in that case, because you do have a smaller mass of coffee and it is bleeding off its heat quite rapidly in those cases. All right, that's it. I hope that answered your question, Iqbal. If you have any questions about coffee or anything like that, or ideas for future videos, drop them in the comments below. Happy to hear them. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.